I work at the local library. There are strange rules to follow. I needed this job. That was the thought running through my head as I stepped into Willow Creek Public Library. The unemployment checks weren't enough anymore, and the bills kept piling up. After losing my office job last month, I had applied anywhere and everywhere. When Summit Staffing Solutions offered me a position at the library, I didn't even bother asking for details. The building sat on the outskirts of downtown, its red brick exterior and towering windows giving it an old-fashioned charm. It wasn't much, but at least it wasn't retail. I had dealt with more than enough irate customers in my previous job to last me a lifetime. Mr. Harris was waiting for me at the front desk, punctual to the minute. He had the kind of exhausted look that never faded, like he hadn't had a full night's sleep in years. His sweater vest was rumpled, his glasses slightly smudged, and his expression made it clear that he had better places to be. Emily Carter. He barely gave me time to nod. Follow me. The library was more spacious than it seemed from outside. We walked through endless rows of shelves, our footsteps echoing in the still morning air. A few early visitors were already settled at the study tables. Harris led me to a small office tucked away in the back. The desk was cluttered with stacks of paper, and an ancient computer hummed softly in the corner. He rifled through a drawer and retrieved a keyring along with a single sheet of paper. "These are your rules," he said, sliding the paper toward me. "Stick to them exactly." I expected the usual orientation, dress code, emergency contacts, where the break room was. But instead, the page held only 3 rules, typed in an old-fashioned courier font. If a patron asks for a book that doesn't exist, inform them that it is unavailable. Never unlock the basement door. If you come across a book without a title, return it immediately to the East Wing shelves. That's it? I asked. No other guidelines? That's all you need. He got to his feet. Let me show you how to use the system. For the next hour, he walked me through the basics. The computer was ancient, probably from the 90s, but the software was straightforward: log books in, check them out, process returns. I could handle that. What about the basement? I asked, recalling the second rule. Harris adjusted his glasses. It's just for storage. Stay out. Got it. I folded the rules and tucked them into my pocket. And the East Wing? Reference section. Mostly outdated books that no one really uses anymore. He hesitated. If you find any books with no titles, put them there immediately. No exceptions. The morning passed quietly. I followed Harris as he familiarized me with the layout. The library was divided into 4 main sections: fiction in the front, non-fiction in the back, a vibrant children's area in one corner, and the East Wing for reference materials. A simple, organized setup. Nothing unusual. Then, around noon, a man walked in. He seemed ordinary enough: suit, briefcase, probably working at one of the nearby office buildings. Yet, something about him felt off. "Do you have the hollow ones?" he asked, avoiding direct eye contact. I ran a search, even though I already knew what I would find: nothing. "I'm sorry, that book is unavailable," I said, sticking to Rule 1. His reaction caught me off guard. His posture relaxed, relief washing over his face as if I had just lifted a heavy burden. Without another word, he turned and left. What was that about? I asked Harris later. You followed the rules. He didn't look up from the card he was sorting. That's all that matters. The rest of the day crawled by. I processed book returns, helped students locate research materials, and worked on memorizing the layout. Around 3 o'clock, an elderly woman asked for help finding a cookbook. As I guided her to the section, she suddenly gripped my arm. "You're new here," she said. It wasn't a question. "First day." She glanced around as if checking for someone else, then lowered her voice. "Did they give you the rules?" Before I could reply, she spotted the book she was looking for and hurried off, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. Later, as I sorted through the returns, I found it, a book with no title. No author. No markings. Just a plain, black cover. I turned it over in my hands, but every inch was blank. Following Rule 3, I carried it to the east wing. The shelves stretched toward the back wall, their spines worn and faded. I found an empty space between two encyclopedias and slid the book into place. "Good," Harris said behind me, making me jump. I hadn't heard him approach. "You're learning." The remainder of my shift was uneventful. Patrons checked out books, used the computers, and went about their day. The work was easy, the pay was decent, and aside from the strange rules, the job seemed normal enough. At closing, I made my final walkthrough. Everything appeared as it should until I returned to the front desk. There, placed dead center on the counter, sat another titleless book. I froze. I had been here minutes ago, clearing everything. I knew that book hadn't been there. The rules didn't say anything about where these books came from or why they lacked titles. Only that they belonged in the East Wing. I grabbed the book and carried it back. The library was empty now, silent. I found another empty slot and slid the book onto the shelf. Back at my desk, I unfolded the rules and reread them, now taped inside my drawer. The rules seemed straightforward, maybe even pointless, but the way Harris had stressed their importance, the strange man's reaction to the missing book, the old woman's cryptic question, something wasn't adding up. I packed my things and locked up for the night. The parking lot was nearly empty, just my car and Harris's aging Volvo. As I made my way to my car, I glanced back at the library. The building was completely dark. Once home, I tried looking up the library online. The website was bare bones, just the hours, location, and a catalog search. Nothing about unusual policies or specific procedures. I searched for the hollow ones and found nothing. No record of the book existed anywhere. My thoughts drifted to Miss Adler, the librarian I had replaced. Harris hadn't mentioned her even once during my training. When I'd asked about my predecessor in my interview, he had changed the subject entirely. My phone buzzed, a message from Summit Staffing Solutions confirming my placement. "Congratulations on your first day. Contract length, indefinite." Indefinite. Fantastic. At least the job was stable. I pulled the rules from my pocket and read them over again. If a patron asks for a book that doesn't exist, inform them it's unavailable. Never unlock the door to the basement. If you come across a book without a title, return it immediately to the East Wing shelves. 3 simple rules. How hard could that be? I set my alarm for the next morning, trying to push thoughts of those blank books, that man's relieved expression, and the basement door out of my mind. Whatever was going on here, I would figure it out in time. For now, I just needed the paycheck. The questions started creeping in during my second week. At first, just little things. Where had the previous librarian gone? Why did Harris avoid talking about her? I had asked about Miss Adler during my interview, but he had changed the topic faster than someone dodging a debt collector. "Hey," I called to him while he was shelving books. "What happened to the person I replaced?" Harris didn't even glance up from his cart. "We don't talk about former employees." "Right. But she worked here for, what, 5 years? Someone must know." "There are books that need to be reshelved in the children's section." He walked off, leaving his cart behind. The morning dragged until a man in a dark suit strode in, heading straight for my desk. Something about the way he carried himself reminded me of the guy from last week, the one who had asked about the hollow ones. "Do you have the hollow ones?" I hesitated. Same book, different person. The search yielded the same result, nothing. "It's unavailable," I said. He turned as if to leave, then paused. "Someone else requested it yesterday, didn't they?" My stomach nodded. I hadn't told anyone about the first man. "Sorry, I can't disclose other patrons' inquiries." He studied me, his gaze sharp and assessing, as if deciding something. Then, without another word, he walked out without checking out a single book. That afternoon, I discovered another titleless book, this time on the return cart. Same black cover. Same blank pages. Just like the others. I carried it to the East Wing and slipped it between the encyclopedias. Harris was waiting for me when I returned to my desk. The rules are simple, he reminded me. Follow them. I did. I put it exactly where. Don't discuss the books. Just follow the rules. Friends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like the stories. That night, I dug into Miss Adler's history. The library's website had no record of her employment, no staff directory, no personnel archives, nothing. The local newspaper listed a few community events she had organized, but the mentions stopped abruptly 6 months ago. No farewell announcement, no reason given. Just nothing. I was about to shut my laptop when an email notification popped up. Summit Staffing Solutions wanted to confirm my ongoing placement. Just checking in. The email chirped. The library has requested to extend your contract. Please reply to confirm you're satisfied with your position. Satisfied wasn't the right word. Confused? Absolutely. Unnerved? Definitely. But the pay was decent, and jobs weren't exactly falling into my lap. I clicked reply and had barely started typing when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice, soft yet urgent. Are you the new librarian? Who is this? Listen carefully. Don't ask questions. Just follow the rules. Is this about Miss Adler? Click. The following day, a regular patron, an older woman who always borrowed mystery novels, cornered me in the biography section. You're still here, she said. Not a question. 2 weeks now. She glanced around before lowering her voice. Stop asking about her. It's better that way. About who? You know who. She grabbed a random book from the shelf and walked away briskly. That week, I found 3 more titleless books, one abandoned on a study table, one sitting in the returns bin, and one just lying on the floor in the fiction section. Each time, I brought them straight to the East Wing. Each time, Harris watched me do it. Friday morning, yet another man entered the library, heading straight for my desk. Do you have the hollow ones? He asked. It's unavailable, I replied instinctively. He studied me for a moment. Someone else asked for it this week, didn't they? I recalled the rules. I can't discuss. They did. I can tell. He leaned forward slightly. How many have asked? Keeping my voice even, I responded, Sir, I can help you find a different book. How many? His fingers curled into fists against the desk, his knuckles whitening. I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. He exhaled sharply and smoothed the front of his suit jacket. You don't understand what you're dealing with here. None of you ever do. Sir, just keep obeying your precious rules. See where that gets you. He walked out, leaving a business card behind. The space where the name should have been was blank. That night, I stayed late to finish shelving books. The rules didn't mention anything about working after hours, just about staying away from the basement door. As I placed the last few books back onto the shelves, the overhead lights flickered. Hello? My voice echoed through the empty space. No reply. I made my way back to the front desk, ready to clock out, when I saw it, another titleless book, positioned dead center on my desk. No one had come in. The security footage showed no movement. Rules were rules. I picked up the book and walked it back to the East Wing one last time. The shelves loomed in the dim lighting as I found an empty space and slid the book into place. Something stirred behind me. I turned to see the elderly woman from before standing at the end of the aisle. You should have left, she murmured. The library's closed. Don't ask questions. Her voice was quiet but firm. Just follow the rules. Please. Without another word, she turned and walked away before I could respond. I hurried to collect my things and locked up carefully, ensuring all 3 locks were secured. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The library was just a dark silhouette against the night sky. The next morning, Harris never showed up. I waited outside until another employee arrived to unlock the doors. Inside, his office was locked. His car still sat in the parking lot. I dialed the city clerk's office. "Hi, I'm trying to reach Mr. Harris from the library." "I'm sorry," the clerk interrupted, "but we don't have anyone by that name employed here." "The library director. He's been here for years. Our records show no such employee. Would you like me to transfer you to HR?" I hung up. When I returned to my desk, a titleless book awaited me. Same black cover. Same blank pages. I took it to the East Wing, found a free spot, and slid it into place. The rules were simple. Just 3 instructions to follow. How hard could that be? I arrived early the next morning, hoping to catch Harris before we opened. His car was parked in the same spot, dew clinging to the windshield, the same place it had been for the last 3 days. The library keys felt heavy in my grasp as I unlocked the front doors. Inside, the building was silent. Empty. I walked directly to Harris's office. Still locked. Peering through the window, I saw his coffee mug sitting on the desk, half full, as if he'd left mid-sip and never returned. I called the police first. They took my statement, but their expressions turned vacant when I mentioned the library. "We'll look into it," the officer said, not bothering to write anything down. Next, I tried City Hall. I had already called twice, but maybe a different person would be working today. "I need information on Mr. Harris, the library director." "Ma'am, as we've told you, there is no record of that employee. But he's been here for years. He personally hired me. Our records include all library personnel. There is no one named Harris employed here." "Then who hired me?" There was a pause. Who is this calling?" I hung up. Back at my desk, I pulled out the personnel files. There had to be something, payroll records, tax documents, anything. But every folder was blank. Just empty pages where employee records should have been. At noon, the man in the dark suit returned. He moved past my desk without so much as a glance, heading toward the fiction section. He didn't browse. He didn't even move. For 2 hours, he just stood there. Other patrons walked around him like he wasn't there. A student nearly collided with him, then veered away at the last second without acknowledging his presence. I switched to the security cameras. He never shifted position, never pulled out his phone, never seemed to breathe. At 2:15, I approached to check on him. Library policy required staff to check on patrons who remained in one spot for too long. As I drew near, he turned, a single, fluid motion, and walked out the front doors. I followed him outside, but by the time I reached the door, the parking lot was empty. That afternoon, I found another titleless book. It sat in the exact same place where I had found the first one weeks ago. Same black cover. Same blank pages. I took it to the East Wing, forcing myself not to dwell on Harris, or the still figure in the fiction section, or the fact that my boss had been erased from existence. The rules were simple. That's what Harris had told me. Just follow them exactly. But Harris was gone. That evening, I started searching his office. The window lock was old, easy to pop open with a credit card. Inside, everything appeared undisturbed. Papers neatly stacked. The computer in sleep mode. That half-full coffee cup, still sitting where he had left it. His desk drawers were locked. But I had a key to everything. Or so I thought. None of my keys worked. I was about to give up when I noticed the bottom drawer wasn't fully closed. Something inside was stopping it from shutting all the way. Buried beneath old manuals, I uncovered a small brass key with a faded paper tag attached, "Do not use." Before I even compared its shape, I already knew which lock it belonged to. The basement door. Rule number 2, never open the locked door in the basement. I sat there, gripping the key, my mind racing through thoughts of Harris, of Miss Adler, of how people vanished from here, and the city simply erased them. A noise from upstairs made me freeze, footsteps. The library had been closed for over an hour. Slipping the key into my pocket, I crept toward the stairwell. The main floor was dark. I had personally turned off the lights before locking up. But someone was moving between the shelves. I reached for my phone to call security, then hesitated. Who would I even contact? The police, who never took notes. City Hall, which had no record of Harris existing. The footsteps halted. Hello? My voice echoed in the silence, sounding unnatural in the empty space. No response. I moved through the fiction section, checking each aisle. Empty. The children's area, empty. The East Wing. A titleless book lay at the end of the reference aisle. I picked it up. The cover was warm, as if someone had been holding it. Sticking to the rules, I placed it on the shelf and slid it into place. When I turned around, a man stood at the far end of the aisle. Not the motionless figure from before. This man was older, clad in a worn tweed jacket. He wasn't looking at me, he was staring at the exact shelf where I had just placed the book. Sir, the library is closed. Without a word, he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. I followed, but by the time I reached the next aisle, it was empty. Every aisle was empty. Back in the office, I attempted to call the temp agency. The number was disconnected. I searched online for Miss Adler again. This time, even the old newspaper clippings about her were gone. As if she had never existed. As if Harris had never existed. The key felt heavier in my pocket. The basement door loomed before me, solid metal, secured with a heavy padlock. The key in my pocket would fit. I could unlock it right now, see what had been kept hidden. But the rules. I thought about the statue-like man. About the woman who warned me not to ask questions. About the people who had simply ceased to be remembered. I left the key in my pocket. Instead, I rifled through Harris's desk one last time. There had to be something, anything, to prove he was real. At the very back of the lowest drawer, tucked behind the space where I had found the key, I discovered a thin folder. The tab read, Adler, L. Inside, a single sheet of paper. The same rules I had been given, typed in that old courier font. Beneath them, written in a shaky scrawl. He's gone. I don't think I'll last much longer. The next morning, another titleless book was waiting at my desk, placed in the exact spot as the first one I had found weeks ago. I took it to the East Wing, selected an empty space, and slid it onto the shelf. The rules were straightforward. But Harris was gone. Miss Adler was gone. And I had a key in my possession that could reveal why. The key felt unnatural in my grasp as I stood before the basement door. I wasn't the type to break rules. I needed this job too badly to risk it. But Harris had vanished. His coffee still sat on his desk, as if he had just stepped away. I turned the key in the padlock. The latch clicked open. The basement stairs groaned under my weight. The emergency lighting cast dim, yellowish glows across the space, providing just enough illumination to see my surroundings. I had expected something worse, something out of a horror movie. But it was just a storage room. Metal shelving lined the walls, boxes stacked neatly along the sides. A desk sat in one corner, covered in dust, except for a single undisturbed space. A nameplate rested in that spot. Miss Adler's. I opened the top drawer. Empty. The second drawer. Also empty. The third stuck midway, obstructed by something inside. I pulled harder, and a folder tumbled out, landing face up on the floor. Employee records, Adler, L. Inside was a duplicate of my rule sheet. Same courier font. Same 3 directives. The rest of the folder contained incident reports. Each one meticulously recording patrons asking about the hollow ones. The final entry was dated 6 months ago. Third request this week. Following protocol as instructed. A logbook lay beneath the reports. Miss Adler's handwriting filled the first few pages, neat and structured. Then, her script changed, hastier, erratic. Harris is gone. I don't think I'll last much longer. Her last recorded words. I moved deeper into the storage space. More shelves. More boxes. Then something unusual caught my attention. A glass display case against the back wall. Inside, lined in uniform rows, were copies of the Hollow Ones. Dozens of them. Identical black bindings with gold-lettered titles. The book we weren't supposed to possess. The book I had told so many patrons didn't exist. I tried the display case. Locked. But at this point, what did breaking one more rule matter? The key from Harris's desk fit the lock. I took the nearest copy and opened it. The pages were blank. Every single one completely empty. I checked another book. Same. And another. All devoid of text. Next to the display case was a filing cabinet. The drawers were unlocked, filled with employee records. Names I had never heard before. People who must have worked here before Miss Adler. Each file contained the same materials, a copy of the rules, documentation of inquiries about the Hollow Ones, and a final entry marking another missing person. The last drawer had a faded sticky note affixed to it, "Do not hire a replacement." I glanced at my watch. 10 minutes until closing. I needed to head upstairs, secure the building, and pretend everything was business as usual. But normal had left the library the moment Harris vanished. I cast one final look around the basement, the vacant books behind their glass case, Miss Adler's logbook, the filing cabinet packed with names of those who had simply ceased to exist. A noise scraped across the floor above me. I froze. The library was supposed to be empty. I had walked every aisle before coming down here. Another sound, footsteps. I clutched Miss Adler's folder and carefully shut the filing cabinet. The footsteps moved slowly along the main floor, right above me. The basement door remained open at the top of the stairs. If someone peered down, the footsteps halted. I flattened myself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. The emergency lighting buzzed softly overhead. Then the footsteps resumed, heading toward the stairs. A shadow stretched across the basement entrance. My fingers tightened around Miss Adler's folder as I stared at the rectangle of dim light at the top of the stairs. The silhouette elongated. Someone was descending. My eyes darted around the room. There had to be an escape. The storage room had a second door, small, half hidden behind a shelf. I had missed it earlier. The first stair creaked. I sprinted toward the door. The handle twisted. Inside was a cramped utility closet, barely wide enough to stand in. Second stair. I squeezed inside, pulling the door shut as silently as possible. Through the narrow gap, I caught a sliver of the storage room. Third stair. Fourth. The footsteps reached the bottom. A pair of heavy shoes came into view, stepping between the shelves. They halted at the glass case. A hand extended, brushing against one of the books. The sleeve was unmistakable, a sweater vest I had seen daily for weeks. Harris. He unlatched the display case and extracted one of the blank books. Then he pivoted toward the filing cabinet. A slight sound escaped me, a sharp inhale, the shuffle of my foot. His head snapped toward my hiding place. "I know you're here," he said. But his voice was wrong. Higher. Raspy. It wasn't Harris. I didn't move. "The rules exist for a reason," the distorted voice continued. "You should have obeyed them." The footsteps advanced toward the closet. We all learn in time. The handle began to turn. I lunged forward, barreling past him. The folder slipped from my grasp, papers scattering onto the floor. I tore up the stairs, 2 at a time. Behind me, those unnatural footsteps followed. At the top, I slammed the basement door and locked it. The key quivered in my grip. A loud thud struck the other side, once, twice, then nothing. I bolted to the front desk, snatched my keys and phone. As I neared the main doors, I risked a glance back. The basement door stood open once again. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. The library loomed behind me, its windows dark except for one. Harris's office, where that half-empty coffee mug still sat, untouched. At home, I reached for my phone to call the police. But then I hesitated. What could I even report? That I had unlocked a basement full of blank books? That something wearing Harris's sweater vest had chased me? That people disappeared here, and no one ever seemed to remember them? I unfolded the rules, still tucked in my pocket. I should have followed them. I spent the night in my car, parked 3 blocks from the library. The basement key rested on my dashboard, glinting under the streetlights. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that thing wearing Harris's clothes, heard that voice that wasn't his. I dialed the numbers of everyone I knew who had been to the library recently. My friend Jessica, who had checked out books the previous week, picked up on the 4th ring. The library? I haven't been there in months. You were there Tuesday. We talked about your research paper. Emily, are you sure you're okay? I ended the call. The library reopened at 8 a.m. I sat in my car across the street, watching people come and go as if nothing had changed. As if the basement wasn't there. As if Harris had never been there. At 9 a.m., I forced myself inside. A manila file sat on the front desk. Not mine. With trembling hands, I picked it up. The name on the tab was unfamiliar. Rebecca Dawson. The Summit Staffing Solutions logo was stamped on the front. Just like mine had been. Inside the folder was a copy of the rules, a ring of keys, and fresh employee paperwork waiting to be completed. I dialed the temp agency's number. Still out of service. City Hall was my next call. Hello, this is Emily Carter from the library. I'm sorry, the clerk cut me off. We have no employee by that name on record. My stomach twisted. That can't be right. I've worked here for weeks. Check again. Our records indicate no one named Emily Carter is, or ever was, employed by the city. Then who's been running the library? Who's been issuing paychecks? Ma'am, I don't see any recent staffing changes for the library. Would you like me to connect you with HR? I ended the call. My desk looked wrong. The personal touches I had brought, a framed photo, my coffee mug, the small potted plant, were gone. The drawers were emptied out, except for a fresh copy of the rules. I checked my email. Account deactivated. My library ID card failed to unlock the staff room. I rushed to Harris's office. The coffee cup was gone. The desk was bare, as if it had never been used. Miss Adler's folder had vanished from the basement filing cabinet. I searched for the employee records I'd uncovered the night before. All missing. The glass case that had held stacks of blank books? Now empty. Even my car was no longer in the employee parking lot. Only vacant spots and unfamiliar vehicles remained. The front doors swung open. A young woman entered, hesitant, clutching a folder bearing the temp agency's emblem. She made her way to the front desk, my desk, and placed her things down. Rebecca Dawson, right on schedule. "Excuse me," she said upon noticing me. "I'm looking for someone who can help me. Today's my first day." I stared at her. Young. Anxious. Likely in need of steady income, just like I had been. "Did they give you the rules?" I asked. She retrieved the familiar sheet of paper. Same courier font. The same 3 rules. Yes, the person who hired me said they were important, but it all seemed straightforward. She smiled. I mean, how hard can it be to follow 3 simple rules? I thought of Harris. Of Miss Adler. Of the countless names in the missing personnel files. How effortless it had all seemed at first. Stick to the rules, I told her. Don't ask questions. Don't dig for answers. Just do exactly as they say. Her smile wavered. Are you all right? Should I call someone? Without another word, I walked out of the library. No one tried to stop me. No one even seemed to notice. Outside, the morning crowd moved along, heading to work, to school, to their ordinary lives. None of them lingered, None of them spared the library a second glance. None of them questioned the people who had vanished inside. I checked my phone one last time. My photos were gone. My messages erased. My entire call history wiped clean. Through the window, I saw Rebecca at the front desk. A man in a suit approached her, likely inquiring about the hollow ones. She would tell him it wasn't available. She would collect the nameless books and return them to the East Wing. She would hear the whispered warnings and disregard them. Just like I had. Just like Miss Adler had. Just like Harris had. I walked away from the library. Away from the rules. Away from Rebecca Dawson, who had no idea she had just accepted a job she would never leave. The rules were simple. Just 3 to remember. But no one ever survived by following them. What do you think happens to the librarians who disappear? Are they erased, replaced, or something worse? Write your opinion in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel. My goal is 1,000 subscribers, so let's reach it together.